Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the Cabinet of Barbados, members of Parliament, members of the family of the Democratic Labour Party, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure for me to be here this evening and to be here particularly at the Dayton Griffith Secondary School, a monument to the stewardship of the Democratic Labour Party between 1986 and 1994, when this school was built, when Erskine Sandiford was Prime Minister, and when Mr. Philip Graves, now Sir Philip Graves, was Deputy Prime Minister. And I'm very pleased to see Philip here this evening. The Dayton Griffith Secondary School was built here in Christchurch. And of course, we hope and intend that before this term ends, we will have completed another school in Christchurch at Searles under the stewardship of the Minister of Education, Ronald Jones. This has been a difficult day for Barbados. Yesterday morning, when 5 young ladies from the parish of St. Philip got up, the sunshine was golden and the skies were blue. This morning, they did not see the sunshine, nor did they see the skies. Death having claimed them for its own. We can only guess at the sense of loss and the trauma being felt by their families, and we condole with them, those families, tonight. I'm sure that the MPs for that part of St. Philip will be doing their work to assist and to stabilize those families in these very difficult circumstances. We remember also, of course, the family of Mr. Aurelia Smith, whose wife died a horrible death as well. And of course, you know, she would have been the sister-in-law of our own Sir Frederick Smith and Vernon Smith, that whole Smith family. And we remember that family tonight as well and extend heartfelt condolences to them. Just makes the point that I think St. Paul made to the Corinthian Christians. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, we're all changed. We don't have any direct control over these things, and we therefore just have to do the best we can when we have the opportunity to do it. But I'm very pleased to be here in Christchurch tonight at this South Alive meeting, the theme of which is staying the course and defining the future. I have not come to respond to any message which is supposed to have been sent to me by the leader of the opposition asking me to call her. I know when I was a youngster and girls were too shy to approach you, they would give somebody, a good friend of yours, their phone number and ask you to call them. I have no intention of being seen anywhere in public with Mayor Motley. Anytime I carry a lady out, you can be sure that my voice is heavier than hers. When the waiter or the waitress comes to the table to take the order, they must know who the man is and who the woman is. So that is not my mission here tonight. My mission is to talk about the Democratic Labour Party and its stewardship here in Barbados. Of course, Christchurch is very special to us, has always been. 1971, when we moved from double-member constituencies to single-member constituencies, there were 4 seats in Christchurch. They only became 5 in 1991 when the Christchurch South constituency was created when the Democratic Labour Party was in office. But in 1971, there were 4 Christchurch seats, and in that election, we won 3 of those 4 Christchurch seats. The only one we did not win, we lost by 144 votes, was the seat in Christchurch West, which was won by Sir Henry Ford, our candidate Morris King, falling short of the mark. And tonight, as I speak to you, there are 5 seats in Christchurch, and of those 5 seats, we hold 4. And we are grateful to the people of Christchurch for the confidence which they have placed in us. And we intend, after the next election, that we should be holding all 5 seats in Christchurch. And I know why I can say that, because last year, the Parliament of Barbados commemorated its 375th, or celebrated its 375th anniversary. And we had a special session at Parliament. On that occasion, His Excellency, the Governor-General, spoke. His Honor, the Speaker, spoke. The President of the Senate spoke. I spoke as Prime Minister, and the Leader of the Opposition spoke. And it was very interesting to me as I sat and listened to the speech of the Leader of the Opposition. And she spoke longer than everybody else. Although we had time limits, she spoke longer than everybody else. But she made it known to all of us, to all who would listen to her, that she was a 3rd-generation parliamentarian. By that, she was saying that her grandfather was a parliamentarian, that her father was also a parliamentarian, and that now she is a parliamentarian. So what she said was true. But what she said also had meaning. It was intended to suggest and to communicate to the members of her party that she had political pedigree and that they had none. And that therefore, she had entitlements which they could not claim. I happen to know that that evening, most members of the Barbados Labour Party present were quite angry because they thought that she was pulling rank on them. And that is what the struggle in Christchurch West is now about. Because she does not think that Maria Ergard has any political pedigree. And she's managed to get at her left hand in Parliament another young lady who will do anything Mayor asks her to do, because she too claims that she has political pedigree. I speak of Miss Anthea Bradshaw. She says that her father was a parliamentarian, so she has pedigree too. So the two of them have now decided that those people in the Barbados Labour Party who can lay no claim to political pedigree have to take instructions from them. George Payne ain't got no pedigree, so he ain't a body. As they say, Glenn Clark wants his bills paid, so he ain't a body. Sutherland, it has no political pedigree, so he ain't a body. That these two who have political pedigree are the ones who have that sense of entitlement, not only to lead the Barbados Labour Party, but of course to lead Barbados. I sit on Tuesdays and I watch them. Well, Miss Motley is seldom there, but the other pedigreed politician, they're sitting like little Miss Muffet sitting on a tuffet. Not a serious idea in her head, but looking grave and trying to look bright until, of course, she opens her mouth and that impression is contradicted. So that is where we are in politics in Barbados tonight, and that's the context within which you have to evaluate what the Democratic Labour Party is doing and why it is doing it. Why we are staying the course and why we are defining the future. I have said over and over again that no political party in Barbados since independence has had to govern Barbados in circumstances as difficult as the circumstances in which the present government has had to govern Barbados. That is an incontestable fact. In the last quarter of 2007, the Western world went into a deep financial crisis. And in January 2008, the first quarter of 2008, the Democratic Labour Party came to office. And from then until now, we have been trying our best against sometimes daunting odds to fight off the consequences of that global financial crisis. Most recent news is that there are now haunting fears that the economy of the United States of America could go back into recession. The economy of Canada, which just had an election, which elected the son of a very good friend of Barbados, the late Pierre Elliott Trudeau, to office. Canada is in recession. The British economy is limping along. The five emerging economies, the so-called BRIC countries, Brazil is in deep financial crisis. Russia, deep financial crisis. India is the only one of the BRIC countries that is growing. But India has a lot of growing to do before it can minister to the requirements of the upwards of 1 billion people that constitute its population. The economy of China, its graph is pointing downward so far as economic growth is concerned. And South Africa, the economy of South Africa, again, is in deep crisis. And that's the context within which we have been governing in recent times here in Barbados. And what have we done? And you heard some of it from Ronald Jones, and when I arrived, I heard the Attorney General Adam Brating some of the initiatives we have put in place and intend to put in place to ensure that Barbados remains a viable society. The very first thing we did was to craft a vision for Barbados. A clear vision that allows us to have a reference point on the basis of which we can make decisions that are intelligible, that people can understand, and that they can buy into. And we've decided, and it's now public knowledge, we've been saying it over and over again, it is on the record of the United Nations, it is on the record of the cities conferences, wherever I have gone, wherever we go, we say it, that we want to create a Barbados that is socially balanced, that is economically viable, that is environmentally sound, and that is characterized by good and transparent governance. And that is what all the decisions that we take in government are about. There's no mystery to any of them. When you hear Minister Ronald Jones talking about the provision of nursery education for people between ages 3 and 5, understand that that is part of our agenda to create a socially balanced Barbados, because there are still people in this society who can afford to educate their children, pay for the education of their children from age 3, and we are here to minister to the requirements of those who cannot afford so to do. And as I had to indicate, and Senator Husbands was quite right when we had the discussion at parliamentary group meeting last Monday night, and of course, I presented the evidence to Minister Jones in the House of Assembly on Tuesday. In the 1961 manifesto of the Democratic Labour Party, 1961, we made a clear commitment to look after the education of the children of Barbados, starting at age 3. We said that we were going to create a kindergarten environment for people between ages 3 and 5, and then, of course, go on to primary school, then to secondary school. And in that manifesto, 1961, and I think that sometimes we have to go back and understand where it is we came from, because a lot of people try to rewrite the history of Barbados and rewrite the history of the political events in this country, and sometimes, in a very studied and deliberate way, try to deny the Democratic Labour Party the credit which it deserves. In that same manifesto we were talking, in 1961, about getting Codrington College, which used to be a university college of the University of Durham, to reopen its doors and to become a college of the University of London, so that Barbadians could go to Codrington College again and do their degrees in whatever they wanted to do them in, as they used to do when Codrington College was a college of the University of Durham. Of course, by 1963, we were able to get a campus, a College of Arts and Sciences here in Barbados, which started at the Harbor and is now at what we know as the KFL campus. But we had looked at nursery education, primary education, secondary education, and tertiary education as long ago as 1961. In that same manifesto, the Democratic Labour Party did not only look at the education of children, but we looked at the education of workers as well. Go to that manifesto and you will see the Democratic Labour Party committing itself to having a chat with the Barbados Workers' Union to explore the prospect of creating or establishing a Labour College in Barbados, the 1961 Manifesto of the Democratic Labour Party. If there is a Labour College in Barbados today at Mangrove, understand that that idea was first bruited in the Manifesto of the Democratic Labour Party in 1961. Not without significance, of course, when the foundation stone was laid, it was laid by Erskine Sandiford, because there was a collaborative relationship between the Barbados Workers' Union and the Democratic Labour Party in those days. So Philip is here, he knows the history. The manifesto is there. In fact, I really think sometimes we should get the 1961 Manifesto of the Democratic Labour Party reprinted so that people can see and analyze and evaluate the development of Barbados from then until now. Too many people have never seen the 1961 Manifesto of the DLP to see where the foundations were laid. And that manifesto can help to explain a lot of what has happened in Barbados since. When the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act was passed by the Barbados Labour Party in 1980, allowing people who lived in plantation tenantries to buy their lots, understand that that idea is accounted for in the Manifesto of the Democratic Labour Party in 1961. And we tried to implement it, but could not do so because at the time, and we're talking about 1961, there were so few land surveyors in Barbados that you could not get the work done. And we had to focus on other issues like protecting tenants who lived in endangered tenantries, like at Eagle Hall, the Bosvigo tenantries. We had to pass legislation to protect them from the malice of landlords and the whimsical behavior of landlords. So tenantries, control, and development, also a creature of Democratic Labour Party policy. We would have been glad to pursue the plan to deal with the plantation tenantries. We didn't have the surveying capability at the time. In fact, in Barbados today, on any objective evaluation, it is still true in Barbados today that we do not have enough land surveyors. So if we don't have enough today, imagine what was the case in 1961. It was a very exclusive profession back then, and still so now. But all of these things help to explain how Barbados has developed from then until now. So within the context of what we came and found in 2008, and we found a lot of things. We found the barrack problem with which we have had to deal. We didn't create it. We did not create that problem, but it was $1 million problem that we had to try and solve. And the people who were urging us to solve it were behaving as though they knew nothing about it. They created it, gave Barrack a contract in circumstances that the files at the Ministry of Housing would make very interesting. And when that whole thing went foul, the Democratic Labour Party had to try and deal with it. They created other problems that we've had to try and deal with, but I'm not going to get sidetracked by dealing with those problems tonight because there's coming a time when we're going to put all these things in context. I just want to deal more specifically with the vision that we have been pursuing here in Barbados. We said we want to create a Barbados that is socially balanced. And by that we mean that we want to create a Barbados consistent with the history of the Democratic Labour Party and with the age-old policies of the Democratic Labour Party, a Barbados in which every man, woman, and child of whatever station in life can find an avenue in this society to realize his or her ambitions and aspirations, to take full advantage of his or her God-given talents. If you're a child, our school curricula must afford you those avenues. If you're an adult, we must have adult institutions around that if you didn't get a chance to do it at school, you can do it as an adult. And if you are aged, we must have institutions around that allow you as an aged person to still take full advantage of the talents that God has given you. We want to create a Barbados that is socially balanced. And we have to create a Barbados that is socially balanced because, let's be very frank, after midnight, the 30th of November this year, we step into the 50th year of our independence. 50 years of independence is a very short time in history. And we inherited a Barbados in 1966 that was socially unbalanced. That was a Barbados where the numerical majority, those who had the majority in numbers, were a minority in influence. And those who had the influence as a minority did not enjoy the status of any majority in Barbados. And that imbalance we have been steadily trying to correct. When Errol Barrett delivered his 1971 budget speech in the House of Assembly, he said the following words. He said, the decade of Reconstruction, 1961 to 71, has been successfully negotiated. It has not been easy. The society which we have inherited bears within it many social and economic contradictions which material advantages such as we have secured cannot alone eradicate. Those are Barrett's words in 1971. That's the society we inherited. And we are going to create a Barbados that is socially balanced, where every man, woman, and child of whatever station in life can find an appropriate outlet for the realization of his or her aspirations and for the exploitation of his or her God-given talents. That is where this party is. And whatever you see us doing in education, whatever you see us doing in health, understand that is where we are going. We are not blindfolded and stepping tentatively into the future. We know where we are going. We are trying to create a Barbados that is socially balanced. It has never been socially balanced at any stage in our history. And the commitment of the Democratic Labour Party is to ensure that that Barbados is created. In that regard, today, we have to pay tribute to the parish of Christchurch. Because if you talk education, a member of parliament from Christchurch is the Minister of Education. If you talk health, a member of parliament from Christchurch is also the Minister of Health. If you talk culture and sport and youth, all of these are instruments that can help us to create that Barbados that is socially balanced. That is also manned by a member of parliament from Christchurch. And the environment in which we all have to do this, an environment which we must ensure never becomes a degraded environment, a member of parliament from Christchurch is also responsible for that portfolio as well. So Christchurch is playing a critical role in shaping the future of Barbados. And I want to say thanks to those 4 ministers from Christchurch tonight who have stuck to the task and who are continuing to help us to shape a Barbados that is socially balanced. Mind the all loose talk you hear coming from those unguided missiles. They don't know what to say, and they deliver themselves of a lot of political inanities and think that political inanities are a substitute for substance in politics. We are not here to discuss any entitlement based on pedigree. We are here to discuss how to create a society in Barbados that is socially balanced, and that doesn't depend on what pedigree you have, whether you are first, second, third, or fourth generation parliamentarian. That has to do with your commitment to the masses of the people and to their welfare in Barbados. So it's not only a Barbados that is socially balanced. We want to create a Barbados also that is economically viable. Now, you know for the last 7 years that we've been in office, you've been hearing the voice of many economists around here carrying on. And some of us were duped by them. Some of us actually believed that when they were carrying on, that they had no political axe to grind, and that they were speaking out of an authentic and genuine interest for Barbados and its future development. Well, the passage of time is going to reveal who these people really are. You will get to understand that the voice was the voice of Jacob, but the hand was the hand of Esau. And you're going to see it in Christchurch East Central. We hear who is angling to be the candidate up there. Well, I don't fight battles before it is time to fight them. And as you know, I don't attack people in politics. I explain them. When you explain a man, it sticks. When you attack him, that can be forgotten. But when you explain him, it sticks. And I have some explanation to do in Christchurch East Central. And I ain't got something to do in Christchurch South too. You take it easy, but we'll wait until that time comes. For the time being, let us stay with Shakespeare's King Henry V. In peace, there is nothing so becomes a man as modest stillness and humility. But when the blast of war blows in his ears, then he must imitate the action of the tiger. He must stiffen his sinews and summon up his blood. He must disguise fair nature with a harsh favored rage, and he must lend his eyes a terrible aspect. In times of peace, we take it easy. But when the blast of war blows in our ears in 2018, you come and you will hear the explanations. We're going to run them. We're going to run them into the sea. You take it easy. If I have any disappointments in politics as the leader of the Democratic Labour Party, it is that sometimes I get the impression that some of the people around me can't wait. Wait. It is coming. Wait. It'll be all right. If you fight the battle now, you give them time to recover. you have to fight the battle at a time where when you get them down on the ground, they can't get back up. So we want to make a Barbados, create a Barbados that is economically viable. And that is because, again, as Barrow said in 71, as we all know, our economy here in Barbados has always been dependent. When it was dependent on sugar, we depended on world markets in Europe and United States of America and elsewhere. It is not as dependent on sugar now as it was. It's now dependent on tourism. But the tourists that come to Barbados don't come from Lodge Road in Christchurch or from Kingston in Christchurch. They have to catch a plane or a boat and come here. And therefore, we are still subject to what goes on beyond our shores. And while we cannot change that reality in the short term, we have to make sure that those things that we can change, we change. And one of the most difficult options which we have had to exercise over the last 7 years in particular, we had it in 1973 when Mr. Barrow was Prime Minister as well. We had it in 1990 when Mr. Sandiford was Prime Minister. And of course we had it in 1980 when Mr. Adams was Prime Minister. We were always vulnerable to what was happening with oil in the international markets. 1973, the oil crisis arising out of the war in the Middle East between the Israelis and Palestine, and we paid a heavy price for that in terms of dislocation, in terms of inflation and unemployment and that kind of thing. Mr. Barrow was Prime Minister. Inflation reached 40% in Barbados during that period because of oil prices. And unemployment reached 22.5% in Barbados as a result of that period. 1980, when there was the Islamic Revolution in Iran, when the Shah was run out of Iran and the mullahs took over. As an oil-producing country, Iran removed 10 million barrels of oil per day from the market, creating demand for oil, which pushed the prices northward and, of course, created a recession in our main trading partners, the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada. Second oil crisis. And the third one, 1990, when Mr. Sandiford was in office, when the DLP was in office, was when Saddam Hussein went into Kuwait. And the Gulf War happened, and of course, as a result, the oil market became unstable. Recession again in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, our principal trading partners, and you know what happened here in the early 1990s. If you didn't know then, you know now. But the political thugs who were responsible at the time for educating the people of Barbados on these issues, rather than educate them, try to give the impression that as a result of things that Erskine Sandiford was doing and Philip Graves was doing and Branford Tate was doing and Warwick Franklin and all the other ministers in the government were doing, Barbados found itself in a situation in which it found itself. They were not candid enough to say, not ingenuous enough to say, that as a result of a deep recession in the Western world, we were being affected here in Barbados. But all those recessions were oil-related. And our dependence on oil has had sometimes a crippling effect on what we have been able to do in the social and other sectors of Barbados. During this global financial crisis, oil prices, as you know, spiraled upward to nearly 150 US dollars per barrel. And if you have to pay over 150 US dollars per barrel for oil, if the market was saying that, you don't, after paying for that, have the fiscal space to deal with things like housing and financing, Steve Blackett's ministry and so on, because you are constrained by those circumstances. And we can therefore only begin to make Barbados economically viable if we look at where we get our energy from. I was telling the people at the Barbados Agricultural Society this last weekend, and I say it here again tonight. I said it during the last election campaign. We can only become economically viable, not only by producing more, not only by buying local, but by dealing with the issue of energy. Now, this week, Wednesday, this Prime Minister will be declaring open the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. Other CARICOM countries wanted it. We fought for it and we got it here. Because we are committed to the reform of our energy sector, to become less reliant on oil, on fossil fuel-based energy, and to incline more in the direction of renewable sources of energy, particularly solar sources of energy, the sun. We have sunshine right through the year. And it is true that we recognized that many years ago in the 70s when we got into solar water heaters and so on, but we did not push the argument far enough. We now have to look at the sun as a source of energy for the generation of electricity and so on. We're doing that. We take the sun for granted. There are people in other parts of the world who don't. I never tire of telling the story of driving across a lonely road in St. Philip one Sunday morning and seeing a lady on her way to church walking, sun beating down mercilessly that Sunday morning around 10 o'clock. And I stopped to offer her a ride, and she refused it. And I was puzzled by her refusal. I said, but why do you want to walk this long road in the sun when I can give you a ride to the corner so you can go on to church? And she said to me, sir, let me explain to you. I lived the better part of my working life in the United States of America. When I wanted heat, I had to pay for it. I get in this free, let me enjoy it. That's where we are so far as making Barbados economically. We have to start by dealing with energy. And that's what we're doing. You heard Ronald talk about what is happening in agriculture in terms of cogeneration and so on. All of that, we are in programs with the Inter-American Development Bank to ensure that people in the private sector can get the resources to take full advantage of opportunities to generate their own energy and therefore reduce their electricity bills. And the government is going to be leading by example because we also have a program with the IDB where every single government building in Barbados will have photovoltaic panels put on it so that we generate our own electricity from solar energy as well. That is the commitment. And that will make us less dependent on fossil fuels. Of course, we're not ruling out fossil fuels. I don't want to be quoted as saying that. Because don't forget, We have offshore possibilities as well for oil. And we're not saying that we're going to ignore those possibilities. What we're saying is that we want a more judicious mix between fossil fuel use and renewable energy use. That, along with increasing our productivity, getting a better educated labor force than we have, and we do have a very educated labor force even now, but getting one that is attuned now to all the changes taking place in the international economy, a labor force that is more adaptable and that sees the world as its oyster rather than keeping its gaze focused on Barbados only. I was very pleased to hear the learned Attorney General. I didn't hear him myself, but I heard him quoted as saying to the lawyers, the army of lawyers who were introduced to the bar 2 Fridays ago, that they have to stop just seeing Barbados as their market and begin to think regionally and hopefully internationally. There was a time when we exported people who went abroad and remitted foreign exchange here, and our human capital is still a very precious resource, and we have to continue to see the world in those terms. So we want a Barbados that is socially balanced and one that is economically viable. We have to produce more. We have to take work more seriously. We have to believe more in ourselves and what we produce, what we create here. Don't so commit ourselves to buying other people's products that we create jobs where there are and ignore the fact that we need to create jobs here. That is what it's about. And that I'm making this speech tonight. I'm going to be brief. I hope I've only spoken about 5 minutes so far. It's important because we approach 50 years of independence. And the next 50 years of independence, this first 50 years were 50 years of entitlement. I've told you about all the things that the government of the Democratic Labour Party put on the table to bring this society along and bring this economy along. These were the years of entitlement. The next 50 years are going to be the years of personal responsibility. So we have to prepare the population to be looking after itself more, relying on the state less, and leaving the state only to look after the most vulnerable people in the society and giving the country and its development that more general direction. So socially balanced and economically viable. And then we also want to create a Barbados that is environmentally sound. In 1961, when we came to office, most of us in here only knew about plastic bags. Sorry, I beg your pardon, about paper bags. Today we know about plastic bags, though. We see more plastic in Barbados today than at any other time in this country's history. The garbage that we create in Barbados today, we could not have created in 1961 because the society was not as developed as it is. The various varieties of waste that we generate in this society, those varieties were not possible when this society was at a lower level of development. They're possible now because routinely, we consume not only things produced here, but things produced elsewhere, and then we have to dispose of the containers and whatever else we use from time to time. And then, of course, we have a healthcare sector that is more advanced today than at any other time in its history. So the issue of medical waste is also critical to Barbados' future. And we do more construction here in Barbados today than at any other time in the country's future. Industrial waste is also, and construction waste, also very critical to what we're doing here in Barbados. So we have a waste problem which we have to resolve. Now, that recognition unites both the Barbados Labour Party and the Democratic Labour Party. They know we have a waste problem, and we know we have one. They knew when they were in office that we had a race problem, and they tried to deal with it. They tried to deal with it by the creation of what I will euphemistically call the Greenland fiasco. Millions of dollars spent and no problem solved. When the time comes that we put our own proposals on the table, it is not going to be as if we are putting proposals on the table for an issue that is new. This is an old issue, and they try to deal with it. How could any of you forget the many occasions on which Richard Goddard appeared on national television saying that going down to Greenland was madness? How could you forget when George Payne said it was environmental madness? But a strong-headed and wrong-headed Minister of the Environment at the time went ahead with it. Millions of dollars spent. Problem still with us, not solved. Greenland, as Chris Sinker likes to put it very graphically, has never received a toffee paper since it was created. So when we come to discuss this issue, it's going to be our solution versus their solution. Their solution was Greenland. That is a fact. Our solution is still being constructed. So I ain't ready for that debate yet. I ain't ready for that yet. I hear all the talk about what going to happen at Vaucluse and who signed this and who signed that. I am waiting. I am waiting because we can have that discussion. And if all that I heard is true, if all the prophecies, the apocalyptic predictions that I heard turn out to be true, we will all be able to say that the person who made those predictions was the most honest and truthful politician Barbados ever produced. But if they turn out to be lies, we will also have to say that that person is the biggest liar Barbados ever produced as well. Let's wait. Let us wait. We'll get there. I just say wait. 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 So, a Barbados that is socially balanced, a Barbados that is economically viable, and a Barbados that is environmentally sound, and finally, a Barbados that is characterized by good and transparent governance. Let me spend a few minutes on this very quickly. Because the tactic of the Barbados Labour Party, and this is not restricted to the Barbados Labour Party of now, it is part of the theology of the Barbados Labour Party to look for and to create thieves wherever they can find them. They don't fight you on programs. They do not fight you on programs. They don't fight you on a housing program or on an environmental solution or on a social program. They look for a means by which they can call you a thief. And nobody has been spared that preoccupation. Reflect, I invite you, that the same Barbados Labour Party, and I'm going to reproduce some of these things, that speech that Tom Adams made in the House of Assembly when he announced that he was going to set up the Duffus Commission to inquire into a number of projects and what he said about Barrow and so on, I'm going to make that a subject of discussion at our Academy of Politics because people have to understand where it is we have come from. The idea was that Barrow was the biggest thief Barbados had ever produced. The Duffus Commission came, investigated international seafoods, Bath Plantation Project, the North Point. What was the one in St. James now? I'm forgetting the fourth one. and found that in Earl Barrow there was no guile, no fault was found with this man. Some of the same people who were part of that crusade were part of the decision and the crusade to make Earl Barrow a national hero. So he was a thief, and then he became a national hero. He was not the only one. St. Joseph Hospital at Brantford, he was a thief too. A lot of razzmatazz. Commission of inquiry set up. A lot of theater on television every night. And then when the commissioners reported, the Barbados Labour Party was ashamed to produce the report. We had to come into office and put it and make it public because no fault was found in Brantford either. They didn't get a chance to give him a knighthood. We did that. But they had achieved their objective of rooting him out of St. Michael West. The late Arlington DeCosta Edwards, they went after him too. He was supposed to be one of the biggest thieves Barbados ever produced. They had investigations at the National Housing Corporation. They tried to implicate not only were after Joy Edwards, yes, but also tried to implicate Philip Graves as well. The Hanschel Commission. No fault found with these men. But they had achieved the objective which they wanted to achieve of getting us out of office. Warwick Franklin. And some Karasicot story. Get a name attached to him. He's a thief too, according to what they would have had you believe. It's a well-known tactic. And in the present government, I heard myself. I sat in the house and heard, and to his credit, and this is why I have a lot of time for Michael Ashley. He has a long memory. Because that woman stood up in the House of Assembly and pointed at him and identified him as some 10% man. A man who, as Minister of Housing, had to get 10% of every contract. Because she was trying to stain him too, and is still trying to do it. Working hard on Dennis Lowe too. Try to work on Ronald Jones too. But poor me, they know I don't want nothing, so they don't bother with me. I ain't got no money sense. I never had money sense, so they don't bother with me. What they have against me is they won't talk enough. But that is the tactic, because as far as they're concerned, ends justify means. And as long as the end is to root a government out of office, tell the biggest lie, destroy the most sacred reputation, and after that you can correct it. They went after Erskine Sandiford too. The same people that held up Erskine Sandiford to ridicule in Barbados were the same people who gave him a knighthood as soon as they had a chance to do it. But the objective had been achieved. And therefore, I want you here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, to understand that this is a tactic that has been tried and proven by them going back to the barriers. None of us were spared. Sorry, I didn't hear. My attention was drawn to something in the paper last Sunday when it came from St. John at Mount Tabor, worshiping with Mara Thompson and her family. Now, somebody was complaining about the opposition to them when they were about to be appointed Chief Justice. Yeah? how these people, the criticisms were based on ignorance and all that and all that. Look, you know, the person who was speaking forgot that when a rumor went out, in fact, when Erskine Sandiford at Water Street Boys School, well, I better say Water Street School, I don't know if it's boy or girl, said that he felt, as Prime Minister, that Cameron Tudor was entitled to the highest office in the land, or to the, whatever he said, but hinting that Cammy could be the next Governor General of Barbados. The same person who was shedding tears 2 weekends ago went and rummaged up every judgment that was ever entered against Cameron Tudor and made it a record of the House of Assembly. Why no? The first time the head of Governor General was debated in the estimates was that year, because all the muck that could be raked up to ensure that Cammy Tudor was not appointed by the Democratic Labour Party as Governor General was raked up. Again, unearthed that debate too for the Academy of Politics. But you know, that is all right. Ends justify means. They secured their ends. Cammy was not appointed Governor General. Damn neither was. Secured. They secured the end. But for them, ends justify means. So, as we administer the affairs of Barbados from day to day, these people are desperately casting around looking for thieves. Dropping remarks, this body on the take, this body corrupt, and trying to fix things onto you so that you become labeled, and people, they hope, would begin to treat you as unclean, politically unclean, that is. It's a tactic. It's a tactic which I want you to understand. And I want you to understand that it didn't start now. These are the descendants. These are the descendants, the political descendants of those who went after Barrow, who went after Philip Graves, who went after Joy Edwards, who went after Cameron Tudor. These are their political descendants. They are faithful to the tactics of their political ancestors. And you got to understand that. I've told my ministers, walk circumspectly and make sure that you are always on the right side of the facts. Once you're on the right side of the facts, no harm can come to you. But it's a tactic. And that is why we accentuate good and transparent governance. So your political party, your government, is not a government that leaves home on mornings and we don't go to our respective offices wondering what to do today. We are guided by a vision. The vision of creating a Barbados that is socially balanced, economically viable, environmentally sound, and characterized by good and transparent governance. And I want to thank all of you here tonight for walking with us as we try to realize that vision for Barbados. You've walked with us, you've counted not the cost, heeded not the wound, sought not for rest. You've labored and asked for little or no reward. Thank you very much. But there's work still to be done. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. It is not easy. We do not function in easy circumstances. Many pitfalls out there, many potholes along this highway we're traveling. We have to negotiate these potholes and try to get to our destination. The first time in the history of Barbadian politics that in my lifetime, first time, that I hear people and opposition and certain people strategically placed in certain interest groups vexed with the government for not having money. vexed with the government for not having money is now. Look, my mother worked as a maid in plantation houses. She worked for bookkeepers, as they used to be called in those days. When a bookkeeper got transferred, he didn't carry my mother with him. So sometimes she was out of work because sometimes the fellow who was coming in to replace the one who was transferred, he brought his own maid with him. And she had to be constantly casting around for work. When she was working, I knew what to expect. I could get many of the things that I wanted. But on those occasions when misfortune dogged her footsteps and she was not able to work because somebody got transferred and there was a hiatus between that transfer and her getting a job, I had to cut back and modify my expectations until such time as her situation normalized and we could get back to where we were before. I couldn't get vexed with her for not having money. You don't get vexed with a parent because he doesn't have money. You don't get vexed with an employer because he doesn't have money. You have to face the reality that there are times when the resources that you want are not available to you, although you will be glad to do the things that are being asked of you. Sometimes you have the will. Sometimes you have the will, but you do not have the wallet. It is only when your will can be supported by your wallet that you can do the things you really want to do. The government of Barbados today has the will. But because of what has gone on in our international business and financial services sector, for example, a hole was dug in our wallet in the area of our corporate tax revenue. So we don't, even though we still want to do some of the things that would meet people's expectations, the will is there, but the wallet is not. When we get back there, but we invite people to understand. You can't get vexed with an individual or you can't get vexed with the government for not having money. But this is a job of education that has to continue. You hear them saying, oh, the Prime Minister, rather than come and talk to the country, always talking to his party faithfuls. Now that's a very disingenuous statement. You know, if I had to stand up here tonight and I were to make the most ridiculous statement, let me think of one. If I had to stand up here tonight and I had to say that Barbadians should not be able to travel to the United States anymore, you know, nobody would say that I was only talking to you. Tomorrow you hear the forces the Prime Minister about all Barbadians? I understand all that. I don't know. It doesn't get on my skin. I don't worry about it. When I talk to you, I'm talking to Barbadians. Where you come from? Where you come from? And when the media reports what I say, I'm talking to Barbadians. And I will determine how and when and where. I don't take my instructions from talk show hosts. No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So, ladies and gentlemen, my half an hour is up. I want to thank you very much for your patience, very, very patient audience you have been. I want to let you know that the government you elected on the 21st of February 2013 is intact. We ain't trying to get rid of any elected member. We're not trying to make enemies, we're trying to make friends. And I want to assure you that as we continue to go through these very difficult times, you can count on us to hold your hand, to listen to your voices, and to ensure that we keep your inconveniences down to a minimum. Do not mistake, I'm tired of saying this, or rather I will not get tired of saying it, do not mistake a moment in time for eternity. We are passing through a transitional phase, but the future of Barbados is bright, and the Democratic Labour Party is going to keep it bright. And as I'm always saying, I quoted it to the Barbados Agricultural Society 2 Saturdays ago. That famous poem, The Psalm of Life, Henry Wordsworth Longfellow, not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way. But to act that each tomorrow finds us farther than today. That is the commitment of the Democratic Labour Party. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.